Welcome, Houston, and welcome back to the Athletes United platform here on the Edge Radio Networks, where truth still matters. I'm your host, of course, Big Mel, his judgeship, master of all that he surveys, and final arbiter of all that comes before him. Today we have a young man on this program that I've admired for years, for decades. Met him several years back, briefly. And he's an outstanding NBA ball player, been an outstanding college basketball player, has been an outstanding Olympiad, for that matter. And since then, he's done some engaging and very interesting things in his career on the administrative and business side and development side of the NBA. So we want to talk to him a little bit about that. Welcome to the program this morning, Mr. Mike Bantom. How's it going, big fella?
It's going well, Mel. How you doing?
I'm doing great. As we mentioned, trying to survive the vicissitudes of whatever this is they call COVID-19. It's driving me nuts.
Yeah, it's been an experience.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mike, you've been involved in so much. I don't know where to start with you, but for the sake of those who don't remember the 72 Olympics, can you give us a sense of that? I mean, how have you processed this over these many years?
Well, hindsight, you get a lot of perspective about things. So looking back, there have been a lot more serious things that have occurred in my life. But at the time, 19-year-old college player who had the honor and the privilege of representing the United States in the Olympics. We were a proud group. We worked really hard that summer to win a gold medal, and had a lot of success. Came down to the last few minutes of the final game against Russia, last few seconds actually, and we had played pretty poorly for most of the game, but managed to rally at the end, catch them with the chance to go ahead with 3 seconds left in the game. Doug Collins, who ultimately played for the 76ers, was at the free throw line shooting 2 crucial free throws. We were down 1 point. He made both of them. And Russia had to inbound the ball with 3 seconds left and down 1 point. They did. We stopped them. And the game, for all intents and purposes, was over. But politics came into play. The communist head of FIBA, which oversees the Olympics, actually came out of the stands and told the timekeeper and the clock keeper and the referees to replay those 3 seconds because the Russian coach, was trying to call timeout and nobody saw them but him.
Wow.
And so they put 3 seconds back on the clock and gave him another chance. They tried it again. They failed. And for another reason, clock malfunction or whatever, they gave them another opportunity to score with 3 seconds left. So they inbounded the ball, and this time they were successful in getting a long pass down the court to their star player, Alexander Belov, who caught the ball, laid it in, and they said, that's it, game's over, Russia wins. It was very heartbreaking. It was very incredible, especially at that point in my life. I had never seen such injustice in a basketball game before. And just to compound matters, we filed a formal protest, which was heard the next day by a panel of 5, I guess, IOC representatives, International Olympic Committee members, 3 of whom happened to be communists. And despite the fact that they all agreed that 5 significant rules were broken by putting the time back on the clock and giving Russia 3 chances to win the game, they voted 3-2 along communist lines to support Russia and support and uphold their victory. So it was pretty disheartening. We were very disappointed in the in what happened on the floor and what happened in the protest setting. So we decided that we were not going to accept silver medals, and to this day we haven't.
Those medals are just somewhere locked away.
Well, they told us for a number of years every year they would send us a letter and ask us if we wanted to accept the medals, and that they were being held at the IOC office in a vault.
Okay.
And anytime we wanted them, we could claim them. But after trying for 10, 15 years in a row and having all 12 of us tell them that we weren't interested in any silver medals, if they wanted to give us the gold medal that we earned, that would be another discussion. But based on the fact that we didn't think we lost that game, we've held pretty firm in our decision.
My God. In the fog of memory, you forget about those 3 chances. And that was significant at the time, man. That had, I guess, a political quaking that was felt all across this planet. And Mike, that was, if I'm not mistaken, the very first gold medal game we'd ever so-called lost. The Americans.
Well, it was the first basketball game that the
Wow.
U.S. had ever lost. They had won the gold medal in every Olympics up until then and hadn't lost a game. And yeah, it was significant for a number of reasons, and politics was a big part of it, because that was during the Cold War period between Russia and the United States. There was no cooperation or love lost between the two countries. We were training all summer, and the coaches constantly kept it in our minds that Russia was the team that we had to beat. And from what I understand from some of the documentaries that I've seen interviewing Russian players, they were being programmed the same way. Their whole intent was to meet and beat us. And fortunately for the script that was being written, we both managed to make it to the finals and meet each other in the finals for the gold medal. There's a lot of under stories to this. One is the fact that at the time, our professional players weren't allowed to play.
Exactly.
They were deemed professional, so that we had to use amateurs, which we had been doing. College players had been winning, and we were winning. But the reality is that, the rest of the world was starting to catch up to the United States in terms of basketball.
That's true.
But they also had a big advantage, because we've come to know in subsequent years that there are a number of professional leagues around the world, in Russia and in Europe, where the players are pretty good. And these guys on this team, they were all 28, 29, 30-year-old players, had been playing in the Olympics and in professional leagues for years. And, I was a junior in college. Everybody was a junior. Nobody was a senior. So we were all kids, and we were talented kids, but kids nonetheless. And from your playing days, a 19-year-old is nowhere near as strong as a 28, 29-year-old man. Plus, they trained as Army soldiers. So, their best player, Sergei Belov, was a lieutenant in the Russian Army. So these weren't kids we were playing against. They were men and grown men, and yet we still beat them. But it was kind of a coming of age. I think a couple of Olympics after that, the IOC decided that it would be best for basketball worldwide and the growth of the game to have our best players play, as opposed to forcing our college players to play. So they lifted that professionalism stipulation, and now professional players play in the Olympics. But back then it was a little different, and we were up against some odds that we managed to overcome, but still the politics played a big part in determining who won that game.
I'll tell you, an accomplished playwright couldn't have written a more intriguing story. I mean, come on.
It was crazy. It was crazy. The craziest part was everybody in that arena knew the game was over.
Sure.
And just like in most high-profile events, they stormed the court. And in fact, when they were over there debating about putting time back on the clock, once they came to the decision that they were going to let Russia replay those 3 seconds, it took a good half hour to get everybody off the court and back into the stands just to play those 3 seconds.
Wow.
And so, and on top of that, nobody's speaking English there. We were in Munich, Germany. All the officials at the table and the referees on the floor were from different countries. So nobody was giving us in real time a understandable explanation as to why we were having to replay these 3 seconds. We were just told, go back out there and play it, or else you're going to forfeit the game. So we did, and as I described, it went down real crazy. But, you know, like I said at the top of all of this, I've come to realize that if that's the worst thing that ever happens to me in my life, I'd be pretty blessed, and I've been pretty blessed. So I'm not, you know, I'm not crying over it.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I've heard this thing explained from different angles, and yours happened to be the most insightful. I'd forgotten all about the three attempts and this kind of stuff. Yeah. And of course, one can imagine just the, you know, the intrigue and misery of sitting there wondering what the hell's going on at that table over there, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a roller coaster ride from extreme elation after working your butt off for 3 months.
Yes.
In the summer, training for all of this, practicing 3 times a day. By the way,
right.
I mean we didn't have the luxury of load management or scientific data that tell us that we were practicing too hard. We had some real tough coaches who believed in drilling us, and we practiced 3 times a day for like 2 months.
My God.
Before we went over there. So to actually hear that horn go off at the end of that journey and realize that we had accomplished the goal that we set out to accomplish was an extreme elation. I mean, we were all happy and tears were flowing and hugs were all over the place. And then the next thing we know, it was all taken away. So it was a crazy roller coaster ride taking place in the middle of the morning in Munich, Germany. And, hey, it was an experience, you know, something that we all managed to go through, and you know, we're all right. We came out of it okay.
Well, you guys are heroes in our minds forever. That game should be forever fixed in our memories and in our judgments, if you will. So, Mike, congratulations for winning that game, if I have to say so myself.
Thank you.
Well, let's move forward. You came into the league in what year? 72, 73, 74? What was it?
Yeah, the year after that 72 Olympics, I was a senior at St. Joe's and University, and I graduated that year and was drafted by number 8 by the Phoenix Suns.
Top 10. We're going to start there. It's about 18 minutes after hour. We're talking with Mr. Mike Bantom of the NBA National Basketball Association. And we're going to talk about the various kind of developmental things he's done since his professional year began. We'll be right back after this moment.
We work our whole lives to support our families. With one accident or illness, it can all be gone in an instant. Now there's a smart, affordable way to protect your family. Go to findhealthbenefits.com and discover low-cost life insurance for as little as $2 per month. Add to that a tax-deferred annuity that can help you protect your assets and grow your money for retirement. Learn more. Go to findhealthbenefits.com or call 877-235-6094. A critical illness can strike without warning and wipe out your life savings. In fact, it's the #1 reason for bankruptcy. Find Health Benefits offers an affordable solution. Get up to $50,000 if you get cancer, stroke, or a heart attack, giving you the peace of mind to focus on getting better while the plan helps you to pay your bills and medical expenses. Learn more. Go to findhealthbenefits.com or call 877-235-6094. 66% of seniors spend more time shopping for cable TV than Medicare plans. Most say because it's just too confusing. Laws change every year. The wrong plan could cost you thousands and prevent you from seeing the doctors you want. Introducing FindHealthBenefits.com. Save time, save money, see specialists without referrals. Go to FindHealthBenefits.com or call 877-235-6094 for this informative brochure.
Society is on the edge. Let's bring them back. Edge Radio, because truth still matters.
And we're back on the Athletes United platform. We're speaking with Mr. Mike Bantom, Senior VP of various NBA developments and former player in the league for several years. Mike, before we get started again with that, you were at St. Joe at one point in college, correct?
Yeah, I grew up in Philly and played basketball like just really my senior year and at high school. But
which high school was that?
At Roman Catholic High.
Okay.
And Roman Catholic has gone on to become like really well known in terms of basketball teams and stuff like that. But it's one of the oldest Catholic high schools in the country. But that being said, I played 1 year, and at the time, the Philadelphia area colleges had formed a kind of unofficial league called the Big Five. And it became very popular along the East Coast and even nationally because of the rivalries. We all played in the same arena. We played in the University of Pennsylvania's Palestra.
That's right.
And we all played our big home games there.
Yeah.
And we all played each other. So there's a big rivalry between Temple, Penn, LaSalle, St. Joe's, and Villanova. And during my time in high school, all of those schools were ranked nationally. So basketball in Philadelphia was really big, and I was determined to go to one of those schools. And St. Joe's recruited me probably the hardest, needed my services more than the other teams because all the other teams were already ranked nationally, and St. Joe's was on the come up. So I decided to go there. Couldn't play as a freshman, but had a pretty good freshman year. We were 21-2 as a freshman team, and then the next 3 years I had pretty good years. Made the All-American team, and as I mentioned, was drafted in the first round.
And now, was there not a Christmas tournament or something, a Big Five tournament or something you guys just engaged in? There's a well-known piece of business around the country.
Well, we all played in separate tournaments. I mean, we went, for example, my sophomore year, we played Villanova in the Jayhawk Classic in Kansas. So, we played Kansas in the first game, and Villanova played Houston in the second game. Both of us lost, so we ended up playing each other. But that wasn't our normal regular season game. We ended up playing each other again later in the season at home in the Big Five game. And just to show you how competitive our league was at the time, we both ended up being selected to play in the NCAA tournament.
Interesting.
And we ended up playing each other again in the first round. So we played Villanova 3 times that year, and that was the year that Villanova was a Final Four team. They actually played in the national championship. So I was a sophomore who was the best player on my team. So we were a sophomore-led team who ended up having to play a championship-level Villanova team 3 times my sophomore year.
Howard Porter and company.
Howard Porter, Chris Ford.
Yes.
They had a really good team. And they proved it by, giving UCLA all they could handle.
You bet.
In that final game. But that's the kind of competition we had. We had Penn was a top 10 team, number 4 or 5 in the country. And I think they lost to Carolina in the first round of or in the finals, Eastern Regional Finals. LaSalle was a 24-1 team that was on probation, and so they couldn't go to the tournament. And Temple didn't win their conference. We were in our conference, and at the time, only conference winners were invited to the NCAA. There were only 24 teams that went to the NCAA. So as a result, the NIT, which has become kind of a secondary conference now, secondary tournament, was a big tournament back then because you had some really quality teams that played in the NIT. Maryland was one of them. One year, Maryland with Tom McMillan, Len Elmore, John Lucas, all those guys didn't win the ACC. So they had to play in the NIT. They never even got to play in the NCAA.
Think about that.
And So that was the competitive environment that was around during that time. So it was tough, but it was really fun. I mean, it was a lot of great players, a lot of great teams, and not everybody got to play in the tournament. And
Sure.
the NIT was a great tournament to play in. We ended up going there my junior year because we lost a key player and we didn't win our conference that year. But then my senior year, we went back, and once again, we were matched up with the best team in the East. We had to play Providence, who had Ernie DiGregorio and Marvin Barnes and Kevin Stakem, 3 NBA players.
Yeah.
So, it was fun times.
And through that maze of skill and ability, you somehow became a top 10 draftee because that's how good you were.
Well, it was really strange because I was really a late bloomer. I never played organized basketball until I was in 11th grade. I tried out for the team and I was terrible. But the coach who was just beginning his legacy, and he's going to be a Hall of Fame coach at some point, his name was Speedy Morris.
Speedy Morris, yes.
He was just taking over Roman Catholic. It was his first coaching assignment as a young man, and he predicted that we were going to be a historic team that was, had a history of winning, and this was going to be the beginning of that tradition. And he was right. We ended up winning the Catholic League Championship that year, and he's gone on to win numerous championships since. But my junior year, he decided to keep me on the team just because he thought that maybe in a year with some work, he could turn me into a player. And he was right. He instilled a lot of confidence in me. But more importantly, I think I fell in love with the game. Yeah. And I really started to work on it during the off season, and all my spare time in the summer, I just spent it playing and trying to develop my skills. And between my junior year and my senior year, I became a really good player who was first team all Catholic and not drafted, but recruited by a lot of schools. Whereas a year before that, the hope of me going to college on a scholarship or going to college at all, given my family condition, was a far off dream. But basketball ended up changing all that for me, and I've been grateful for it ever since.
You were known as, in our day, 6'9" wasn't exactly a small guy in those days.
Well, no, I played center in college. But once I got to the NBA at 6'9", 210 pounds, the center position was a little beyond my reach.
That's not option.
So I had to, when I came into the league, Wilt Chamberlain and Willis Reed and Bob Lanier and Artis Gilmore, these were the guys that were manning that center position. So
like, no thank you.
I wasn't trying to be no center. So I had to learn how to play the forward positions. And fortunately, with my length, I could play both positions, and I think that helped me during my career because I could guard big guys. I could guard power forwards and I could guard small forwards. Sure. So I was able to, have a little bit of flexibility there, and I think it helped, present opportunities for me during my career in the NBA.
Unquestionable. You had a great career. You were very agile, and that's to, I guess, Speedy's credit to some degree, and whoever that was at St. Joe. But Mike, after your career, after you were done playing, you faced a decision, I suppose. What do I do from here on? How should I consume the spirit and fire that's in me to compete and to be a part of something, develop something? What went into your decision to get involved with the NBA and its developmental phases?
Well, it's funny because after 9 years of playing in the NBA, I had the opportunity to go and play professionally in Italy. And while at first I wasn't very enthused about that, I thought I could still play in the NBA, and I could. But the opportunity and the offers that were being made to me once my contract was up with Philly after my 9th year, I was 31, about to turn 31. And I just started getting these offers to come play in the Italian league. And my agent at the time, kind of convinced me that it was a great opportunity. So I decided to go over there for a year and see. And sure enough, it was a great opportunity. The lifestyle was fantastic. I loved the country. I loved the culture. And the basketball was pretty good, too, because at that time, they were starting to recruit veteran NBA players to come over and play in their league. So Bob McAdoo was there. George Gervin came over. A lot of guys who had been in the league were now finishing their careers over in Italy. And so that's what I did. And after 1 year, I decided I was going to stay longer, and I ended up staying 7. So I played until I was 39.
Okay.
But during that time, I noticed how the NBA was starting to have much more of a presence internationally. From the time I got there to 7 years later, when I was ready to move on and transition out of basketball into something else. And I had a marketing degree from St. Joe's, and I really couldn't figure out what business or company or whatever I wanted to get into. But I saw an opportunity with the marketing degree and the international experience, life experience, of possibly doing something with the NBA in the marketing field internationally, since that's something that they were growing and starting to expand upon.
Sure.
And so I contacted the commissioner, David Stern. At that time, I wrote him a letter, which is a sign of how old I am. It wasn't an email or a text. It was an actual handwritten letter that I mailed to him. And I described myself and my experiences and my desire to possibly help with their international exploits. And he agreed that it was a good idea. And he brought me in. We interviewed, and I was hired as an international marketing manager.
Interesting.
So I worked very hard those first few years as we were trying to build the brand of the NBA and the game of basketball around the world. We did coaching clinics all around the world for all the coaches in the world. And then we did participation events like the Hoop It Up type things, 3-on-3 basketball outdoors in all the major cities in Europe, Paris, London, Germany, Rome, all over the place. We would set up these huge outdoor basketball events to get more people playing the game of basketball. And it was very successful. As you've seen now, the NBA is like probably 1/4, over 100 of the 450 players in the NBA are from other countries, international players. And the NBA had a lot to do with that in terms of growing the game and exposing young players around the world to the possibility of playing basketball at the highest level in the NBA. I think you can see over the 30 years now that it's been since I joined the NBA, how the international game has grown and how the international presence in the NBA has grown.
Mike, I've seen pictures of you in sub-Saharan countries, sub-Saharan Africa, in various countries there. Basketball has a presence there?
Oh, yeah. For the last couple of years, well, first of all, I mean, we've been all over. We've been in Africa ever since Mandela. Mandela invited us to come there when he became president to put on basketball clinics and inspire the youth of South Africa, who understandably were in a very depressed state, having come out of apartheid. They were living in poverty. There's a lot of drugs and a lot of violence that was going on in those townships, and understandably so. When you're oppressed like that, there's not a whole lot of ways for you to express yourself. But I went over there with a group of people. The commissioner included Patrick Ewing, Dikembe Mutombo, West Unseld. We put on clinics because he felt that even in that depressed state at that time, they looked up to NBA players, and that NBA players could inspire them to be something better.
Absolutely.
So that's where it started. But recently, we've opened an academy in Africa, near Senegal, where we recruit 20 to 25 of the most talented young players, 16, 17-year-olds that we find throughout the continent, and we bring them to our academy where we train them, we nurture them, we educate them, and we try to prepare them to play basketball at a higher level. And a lot of our players from our academy have gone on and are playing Division I college now. And some of them eventually are going to be drafted into the NBA. So there's some in the G League right now.
One of the things I've noticed, and particularly been impactful, that's the center position. center is now played by guys with names you can't pronounce from countries you can't spell. Are you accountable for some of that, Mike?
Well, I like to think so because we were very early in the process and we were planting seeds.
Sure.
I'm not over there now. There's a friend of mine from Philadelphia who is actually the technical director and coach of the African Academy, who went to Rhode Island, but he's a Philadelphia guy. His name is Roland Houston.
Okay.
And he's over there training these guys according to the highest, I don't know, techniques and levels of NBA coaching that we could bring without actually having NBA coaches there. But I mean, first of all, Africa, like in many other ways, is just a walking resource. There are tons of talented athletes and people walking around who, up until we decided to provide a platform for them, didn't really have the resources or the platform to get out of there and to get to a higher level. I mean, even until we started the academy and the competition designed around the academy, there was no way for these young athletes to develop their talent or to develop their skills. And now there is. And then I think the pictures that you saw were probably even more recent, like last summer, where we made plans to launch an African league.
Wow.
Where it's going to be an NBA style league, where they're going to play NBA rules and it's going to be managed by NBA people. And driven like an NBA business. So all the businesses that you see surrounding the NBA will be developed around the Basketball Africa League.
Sounds good.
And the only thing, it was supposed to launch in the fall of last year, 2020, but the pandemic stopped it.
I see.
So right now, I think what they're trying to do is figure out a way to get this thing to launch it, because everything's been put on hold. You couldn't have travel amongst all the African countries, with the pandemic going on. So until we can figure that out, but it's definitely teed up and ready to go. And it involves all of the African nations, because all those countries have an opportunity to play in their leagues and rise from their leagues to compete in our league. And once that happens, I think you're going to see an even bigger explosion of African talent that will find a way to rise to the top and ultimately, get more exposure both in that league and coming to our league and playing in our league.
My God, it's going to be exciting. Mike, we only got a few minutes left, but I have a question now. You spoke to some social oppression in some of those African countries and some of those communities and townships. What's your feeling on some of the social advocacy that's going on now among some of the youngsters in the league? LBJ and his minions and some of the guys who are so willing to put it all on the plate, on the table, and up front.
No, I think it's one of the greatest things I've been able to witness in my lifetime. I'm just so happy to see that the sport that I'm so deeply associated with, and I've had a lot to do with orientating those young guys, LeBron and CP3 and all those guys, their class into the league, because I was working in player development at the time, and we were responsible for helping those guys mature and learn all the things that they needed to learn off the court.
Sure. And
the fact that they have taken their popularity and their fame and put it to use in such a needed area, because we all know that the inequality and social injustice in this country for blacks has been ongoing since the time we got here. And there's been a number of uprisings and protests and people who have laid the groundwork throughout the years for us to be where we are, and for them to recognize that and be grateful for that and be so willing to sacrifice in order to make things better for everyone, I think is so admirable, and I'm so proud of them. And
So am I.
I'm actually now in a situation where I retired from the NBA this summer, and my attempt to be involved in an active way as somewhat of an activist is to take advantage of this opportunity now to of companies trying to become more diverse in the boardroom. So I've been studying for the last few months everything about corporate governance. I'm seeking to sit on some boards where with companies who are interested in social reform and diversity and equity and inclusion, and I want to do my part from that standpoint. That's what I'm looking to move into in the next phase of my life right now.
Mike, that's one reason why I was proud to have met you, to have known you. I've always admired you and looked up to you. Good luck in what you're pursuing here. I hope you'll come back sometime and update us, if it's possible.
Well, I'd always welcome the opportunity to speak to you. I love the platform that you have.
Thank you.
Love the mantra. The truth still matters,
Yes,
because it obviously does, and it's not always obvious every day when you turn on the TV and look at some of the news shows and all the propaganda that's being thrown our way, and it's very hard to determine what the truth is. So I'm glad that there's a voice out there that's giving, a way for the truth to be heard. And I admire you, I respect you, and anytime you want me, just let me know.
Well, thanks a great deal. We've been talking to Mr. Mike Bantom of NBA player development, and he's done some of everything from player development to referee operations. Mike, what's your current title before you retired? It was
Executive Vice President of Basketball Development.
Wow.
I left the referee operations department after 5 years, about 2 years ago, and I was working very heavily on the academies that we're building around the world and the Basketball Africa League.
All right, fantastic. Mike, appreciate you being here today. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Mel. Take care, bro. Stay
Absolutely.
safe.
You too. Bye-bye. We're out.
Bye.
The Natural Nation Network is really about taking control of your health physically, spiritually, emotionally, even intellectually, because there's so much out there in misinformation. There's a lot of people now that are suffering from all sorts of diseases that they really wouldn't have to suffer for if they had better information. And that's what we're here to do. Provide information that can save lives.
The mind and the body are totally connected.
Health can be really serious, and sometimes we just have to lighten it up a little bit while we're still providing substantive information.
And my sort of mantra on the salsa dance floor is kind of similar. I tell somebody, if you make a mistake twice, it becomes a move. Okay,
Tune into Natural Nation every Tuesday at 11 a.m.
Aren't you tired of not getting what you want in bed?
Are you ready to spice things up behind those closed doors?
Woo! We're here for you every hump day at 7 p.m.
This is Sex on the Edge with Jen and Hen. I'm Jennifer Reeves.
And I'm Hendrik Scott, and we are professional licensed sex therapists.
So remember to watch us Wednesday at 7 p.m. on Edge Radio TV, just in time for sexy time.
Welcome again to the Athlete United platform here on Edge Radio TV, where truth still matters. I'm your host, Big Mel, better known as his judgeship, master of all that he surveys and final arbiter of all that comes before him. I have a couple of comments I want to share with viewers today, because I think sometimes non-linearly, particularly on matters of social significance. And something that's come to my mind, come to my attention of late, is the impact socially and across family structures of criminal justice system here in our country. I was reading a book by an author named Michelle Alexander. It's called The New Jim Crow, a powerful book. It's just one of those books that come along, that changes something about the body policy, changes something about the airwaves of how we speak on the matter. He points out that mass incarceration is more than just prison systems and people who are in prison. People who do violent things should go to prison. I mean, that's how we look at it, and of course they will. But there are twice as many people on parole today in probation as there are in prisons. And oftentimes for some non-violent reason, drugs, for example. And they wind up losing their civil rights in unspeakable terms. They lose the right to this, the right to that, and oftentimes they've only been convicted of something as non-felonious, non-criminal, non-violent as drugs. Only about 5% of people who are arrested every year have been convicted of violent crimes or charged with violent crimes. People who have been convicted of violent offenses typically get much longer sentences, as they should. But people who have been convicted of non-violent crimes are facing those kinds of significant, they're being extracted, people. They're being used, they're being mass criminalized, sometimes at early ages before they're even able to vote. And that is having an impact across family lines. I have young daughters. Read a stat that said if they haven't found a mate by the time they're 22 years old, 22, think about that. Chances of finding a mate within their own subset has been reduced dramatically until they're in their late 40s, early 50s perhaps. Where are they? They're in jail. They're on probation. They're on parole. They're non-functionary. They have the inability to even apply for a student loan because you're a felon. You've lost that right. And if your folks live in subsidized housing, you may be ineligible to live there. You may not be but 17 years old, but you can't live there any longer. So people, it's not right. And I don't know what we're going to do about it, but the war on drugs has been a primary vehicle for sweeping people into the criminal justice system, not necessarily locking them up, just putting them on probation or parole. And these are very damaging and and dehumanizing statuses in this society. People talk about the criminality of harsh, mandatory minimum sentences. Back during the Clinton presidency, he had to personally intervene to commute the sentence of a young lady whose recently met boyfriend asked her to drop him off at a place and wait for him for a few minutes. By all known measures, she was an upstanding and stand-up person. Had the president of her company come forward to testify on her behalf as a character witness. Had churches and people of goodwill in the community come forward. She's a single mom of two. Met a young man she thought looked promising. Somehow in her car one day, as he's riding with her, stop here a moment, I'll be right out. But the place happened to be targeted. The place happened to be somehow a focal point for felonious activity, as you will. He was arrested, she was arrested as accessory. And because of the harsh mandatory minimum sentences, she was facing 5. The judge himself appealed to tried to reach the appellate level. He was against it. No, mandatory. You went to jail. Probably within 18 months you were free as a matter of commutation. But it just gives you some sense of what that means. And this book references the new Jim Crow. We all understand what Jim Crow was and what Jim Crow did. Mass incarceration in the age of colorblindness. This book was written probably within 2 years of the Obama first term. And I guess we were all living this the desire of a kind of post-racial society, a kind of new idea. We were the vanguards of the new dawn, if you will. No, not much changed in that fact. Young men of color are convicted and are arrested and convicted at no higher rate than anyone else. But when they are convicted, they're given much harsher sentences for the same offense. And they find themselves on the streets, 25, 30 years old, with limited rights, limited ability to mobilize in the society they grew up in. It's not right, people. It's not right. There's going to have to be a lot corrected in our criminal justice system. There's going to be a lot corrected in how we view young POC. Melanin can no longer be a cause for criminalization, is the point I want to make. My name is Big Mel, or more fortunately known as him, Judgeship. I thank you for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. Thank you very much. I'm out.